Um, when I left home, like again, I don't normally go into this depth, but I want you to get this piece, especially for some of you. I just told you where my mom was working in the factory. That was going to be the destiny I had. But I left home pretty angry. I was a pretty angry kid. And the last time my mom came at me, she came at me with a vacuum cleaner pipe, and I picked up a piece of wood and I said, "You come near me again, I'll knock your head off." That's the kind of we were close. But you see, I left home, I started dabbling in business. My first business, I was a window cleaner. I had a window cleaning round, I had a chimney sweep round, so I was a chimney sweep window cleaner. I worked always, I worked with my hands, that was it. And all my friends at that time, everyone I knew would get high. And we all carried tins of old Holborn tobacco, and there was always an ounce of Moroccan black in there, and everyone would get high. I didn't know anyone that didn't get high, right? And if we weren't getting high, we're getting drunk. And in England, we don't have a picture ID, or didn't have picture ID when I was 15. And so, you know, a lot of kids go into pubs very, very young. I don't know if it's the same thing or not, but back then, at that time, it was. And fortunately, something happened to me. And I was 20. I'd been dabbling in business, and yeah, I was doing all right. And I was playing darts for a local pub, and we played pretty high-level darts. And I was asked to go away on a 6-day cultural, all-inclusive holiday in Tunisia. Now, raise up your hands if you know where Tunisia is. Raise up your hands if you have no idea. I had no idea. I left school at 15. I had no idea where we were going. It's North Africa. So we went to this resort, and we just get loaded every single day, right? I have no idea what the culture was about. I have no idea about the people. But when my friends left, there was 12 of them. When they left, and I remember I went to the airport with them, I decided I had about $2,000 left. I decided to travel until my money ran out. And at this point, again, we've been in this country for a week, and I hadn't seen any of it, really. And when they took off, and I turned around at the airport, now remember, I'm 54. And at that time, I'm 20, so 34 years ago, we had the little short shorts with the little tassels on, you know what I'm saying? And the white beaters, you know what I'm talking about? And I've got, you know, I walk, singlet, yeah, sorry, white beater. It's not, do you call it that? And so, I turned around and, you know, already I was pissing everyone off because they're, you know, showing your shoulders and having disrespect by wearing such a small amount of clothes. I mean, it was small by any country standards, really, but that was the fashion, right? And there was a lot of hostility. I was terrified. I was scared. I had no idea. I'd never really been in the world on my own before. And so I went and locked myself in a hotel room for 7 days. And this was an expensive hotel. So I blew through half of the money I had. Half. 7 days, $1,000. And in the end, you know, this is how ignorant I was. I was ignorant because I thought, you know, I gotta, and in that 7 days, I kept looking at my passport thinking, when I get back to England, because I was born in England, I'm gonna go back and show everyone where I've been. How many of you find that sometimes you do more to impress other people than you do for yourself? Be honest, right? Yeah, exactly. So here I am. But, so what happened was, I was so ignorant, I went down to a local travel agent in Tunisia, and I tried to buy a ticket. I heard Israel was a really good place to travel as a traveler, and I go in there to buy a ticket to Israel, and the guy says to me, "There's no such country." I'm like, "What are you, an idiot? Of course there's a country called Israel, right? Because I'm in an Arab country. They don't recognize the state of Israel. I'm trying to buy a ticket to fly, thinking that they..." Anyway, that's how ignorant I was. But I ended up traveling. That journey lasted 10.5 years, 42 countries. And it took me about 1.5 years to stop being scared of everything and everybody. And it was just a really, really important time. And when I arrived in Canada in 1989, I slept on a roof the first night, and I slept on a lot of roofs. People would say to me, "Why did you sleep on so many roofs?" I'd say, when I go into a city, I had a rule, or when I flew into a new country, that I wouldn't spend any money until I had a job and I had somewhere to live. And so, of course, I'd go in, and I'd sleep on the roof because no one was up on the roofs. It was actually, for me, the safest place to sleep was on a roof, right? So I'd always sleep on a roof. Slept on the roof the first night. And my first job was cleaning rooms at the Admiral Motel. And the owners still own the motel. Alan and Jean still own it after all these years, right? And I got a job in a fish and chip shop in the afternoon. And my journey, I was illegal in the country for about 3 years. But I fell in love with Canada, and I wanted to be there, and I found a way to be there. But what was interesting was, when I found network marketing, I was earning $4 an hour as a waiter. In Canada, we have a thing, I know in this country, you know, it's called tipping. Tips. like tipping. It's not a country in China. It's not a county in China. But so $4 was your minimum wage, and you worked for tips, right? Tops. Chops. No, but we worked for tops, and that's what I was working for. But remember, I come from a broke mindset. My mom was broke. My brother was broke. My sister was broke. Our whole family was broke. We never had any money in that family for as long as that family existed, as far as we can look back. My mom's dad was a milkman, right? And so what happened was when I joined the industry, I really just joined a company. I bombed. I didn't have a credit card. I didn't know anybody. I mean, I was in a country. I didn't know anybody. I had no contacts. But I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know how to ask for help. I just didn't know what to do, to be honest, right? And I bombed. But luckily, I had a girlfriend with a credit card. That's a whole other story. But what happened was, I joined another company, and they made me read a book called Think and Grow Rich as part of the requirement to join the company. And I read this book, and no one had ever told me that I could be rich. No one had ever said, Dave, you can be rich. You can have as much money as you want. You can do what you want. And I read this book, and I read it like 3 times. And the first thing I did, everyone I knew at that time, everyone I hung out with were broke. I only had broke friends. I'd only had broke friends my whole life. Right? Everyone was broke. Everyone I knew was broke. And I started making some changes. I actually started cleaning house a little bit. And I thought, if I'm going to be successful, and what I read in the book said I could, and I realized I was in a vehicle where I could, right? So I started to actually apply, and I started to listen, and I started to learn. What I'm going to try and teach you this weekend is what I learned in that time. And I remember it was about 8 months later, I got to $10,000 a month. And I remember sitting there, and I was overwhelmed. I'm saying, 10,000, it's like what Sarah just talked about. This is like, this number, I'd never gone through my psyche that I could make $10,000 in a single month. And I'm looking at this thinking, no one ever told me that. No one ever said, Dave, you can make whatever you want. Dave, you can have 10,000, 20,000, whatever you want. And my income went from 10 to 20 to 30 to 40 to 50 to 100,000. And again, I'm not saying this to impress you. I just want you to understand that I've earned over $1 million in a day. So when I talk about adding zeros, this isn't some bullshit story I made up or read in a book. This is the reflection of my life in this profession. I am so in love with this profession. I am so freaking proud to be a professional network marketer. Like with every fiber of my body. Right? You're going to get this piece if you can just glean a little bit of my belief, because a lot of you don't believe right now. When I look in your eyes and ask you what you do, and you say, right? And say this with me, I gotta stop. Taking advice from broke, unhappy people. Because it's broke, unhappy people that make you feel like crap. You go up to someone who's broke and unhappy, you try and talk to them about this opportunity to change their life. They're the ones that are just pull the rug out. That's the reason why a lot of people are one conversation away from quitting. Does that make sense? Yeah. How many of you, by the way, how I got to work with Jim and Kathy? I became the president of a network marketing company. I was the president and CEO of a network marketing company. And when Jim and Kathy were in retirement, I actually tried to recruit them as our star associates. And Jim was so beautiful and so gracious. And he was amazing. They looked at our company for a couple of months. They were seriously looking. And then he phoned me one day when he found Isagenix and John Anderson. And he says, Dave, he says, we found what we're going to spend the rest of our life doing. And he was so elegant in how he said no to me. Such a beautiful. And then many years later, about 4 or 5 years later, Kathy heard about the work I was doing as a trainer. And she came and watched one of my first, I was training about 1,600 people. And her and I sat in my hotel suite and we talked. And at the time I was making about $150,000 a weekend, doing what I loved, right? I know it sounds crazy. And I want to tell you, because you should feel that a little bit, but you should feel, hey, it's possible, right? Remember, I was always drunk, I was high, I was angry, I was in jail. I was the worst car thief you've ever seen. I got caught so many times. I remember sitting in jail one time, right? And this guy was trying, I was lying to him. And luckily I was a good liar at that point. But my life was a mess. I could have gone either road. Either road. It was one book, it was one person, and someone looked into my eyes and said, I believe in you. Baby, you can do this. And I started listening to different people. And I started to believe what they told me. And I started to look in the mirror and see possibility. Does that make sense? Yeah. Right? Anyway, so with Jim and Kathy, I was working for T. Harv Eker at the time, who owned the largest training company in the world. And Richard used to work with me then, right? And I watched these people buy $30,000 worth of personal development. And what would happen was, at year 2, they'd come back, year 3, they'd come back, they'd keep it, they'd buy a whole suite of products. And I wouldn't see the change in them. So here I am selling the highest level of personal development, doing these amazing programs, and I couldn't see the shift that I thought people deserved. So I left, and I joined Jim and Kathy as a partner. I'm not employed by them. They pay me money. I'm not employed by them. I'm not an employee. I work with them because I trust them. I believe in them. And so what happened was, if you think of that sort of partnership was because the reason why personal development on its own isn't enough. You have to grow yourself. But what you need is you need the right vehicle and the right group of people around you. There are people in this room right now making serious money. $250,000 a year, $200,000 a year. Suzanne, what do you make here? $1 million a year. Suzanne was broke. Her daughter had to lend her $2,000 to pay the rent before she joined Isagenix. She was terrified of being on the streets. $1 million a year. You've added a couple of zeros? Does this make sense? I know there's a heavy feeling in the room, but I want you to understand that I didn't read this stuff I'm teaching you in a book. I'm sharing with you a life story. And what happened with Jim and Kathy, I would take a bullet for these two people. I believed in them so much and what their vision is, and I believe that each one of you in the right room, the right vehicle. And at the end of this weekend, you get a 10-year mindset, and you decide to just treat this like a freaking profession instead of dabbling. Imagine, what if? What if? How many are excited? Yeah! Give someone a high five. Say, I'm excited.